This is a Main Hustle Media podcast.
Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Jackie O and you're listening to Militantly Mixed.
Yo, this is Rashani from the Single Simulcast. And when I'm not making you laugh or making up parody songs, I'm kicking back, listening to Militantly Mixed.
Konnichiwa, what's up, y'all? Welcome to Militantly Mixed, the podcast about race and identity from the mixed race perspective. I am your Sir Auntie, Charmaine Fury, and I am back from my trip to LA for the Free to Be Fest this weekend. And I wanted to chat a little bit about my feelings about how wonderful this weekend was for me, beyond just Free to Be Fest. The Free to Be Fest was amazing, and I'm going to talk about that, but also just the homecoming itself was really good and healing for me, because I've really had a rough go of it here in Seattle for the last 6 months. And so it really just felt really good to be home. I don't know. I don't know why in particular. I've been back to LA a few times since Tristan died, but for some reason this time it really hit how much I needed to be there. And to also have the Free to Be Fest at the same time was amazing as well. I am going to bring on the rest of the planning committee on a future episode of Militantly Mixed so that we can all kind of, as a group, debrief the festival. But I did want to share right now, because it's still fresh for me. I just got back a couple days ago. It's still fresh for me, the experience. And so I do want to share it while it is fresh, because grief has fucked with my memory so much. Things fade really quickly, and I want to get it out while I'm still feeling it. I also have a really big life announcement to make, and I don't really know what order I should do that in. I guess they can kind of probably tie together in a little bit, because part of traveling to LA that was so good for me has a lot to do with how difficult Seattle has been for me. And I will say I don't regret me moving here. I don't regret the reasons I chose to move here are still valid for me, even though it has been a struggle. And as a person who's very nomadic, I have moved around for the most part every 5 to 6 years for the last 30 years of my life. Actually, my whole life. What am I talking about? I have a military family. We moved around a lot when I was a kid, which is why I think as an adult, I still like to move around a lot. But in the last 5 years, it's actually been a lot more challenging, because I have moved every year and a half or year since 2021. And unexpectedly, obviously not most of those, or some of those moves weren't planned, but because my husband died. But I have wanted to find a place where I can settle and be comfortable for a little while and, exist in my grief and try to rebuild my life. But, besides how challenging grief makes that, and loneliness in particular here in Seattle for me, I think it's hard to make really smart decisions for yourself when you're grieving, and you can kind of only do the best that you can. So after living with my friends in Phoenix for a year after Tristan died, and, them kind of making sure I was cared for, I decided to come up here to Seattle. One, because every time I've visited Seattle, I've really loved it. Aesthetically, it's lovely. Like the mountain views in the background, the water everywhere, the rain and the fog. That's my fucking jam. That is the environment that I enjoy being in. I'm not a summer girly type person. Actually, I get the reverse seasonal depression. So when most people are sad in the winter, I'm sad in the summer. And so a place like Seattle, like aesthetically and physically, makes sense for me. And I've always kind of been curious about living in the city. It's been on my list for a while, even before Tristan died. And because one of his brothers lives here with his family and stuff like that, I thought, at least I'll know somebody and I won't be entirely alone, and it'll be great. But it has been challenging because I can't hang out with my brother-in-law's family every day. They have a life. I have to have a life as well. And I only know a handful of people up here that I've met through podcasting. So not people that I know well. And it's also, I find very challenging to meet people and start to turn those into relationships and friendships because they'll never like know me. The version of me that I am now is so different, I feel, from the version of me that existed before Tristan died, that I'm kind of weird about meeting new people and becoming friendly with them, because I feel like I'll never be able to really be truly who I identify as myself, because I don't identify with myself anymore or currently. There's still a lot of trying to figure myself out that's happening. And so Seattle's been really lonely, and it's been a challenge. And I've had so many random white people come up to me to say something negative or nasty, unprompted. Like I'm usually just standing there when it happens. That it's been it's been so jarring. I have lived all over this country. I've lived in 5 or 6 states: California, Arizona, Texas, Massachusetts, Washington. Oh, 5 states. And the most racist places I've ever visited and or lived have been northern cities. So Boston being the most racist place I've ever been in my entire life. And while also a beautiful city, it's a really negative place to live when you are a person of color. And I've always made the joke, but I think this is real. I think it's because they segregate their white people there. You know, they have very specific white communities, Italian area that only Italians kind of live in, Irish area that only Irish people kind of live in. And then the rest of the place is kind of like the presumed like English, you know, folks or whatever, or general Europeans. And so if that happens, you know, the brown people really don't stand a chance. I have found Seattle to be pretty high on one of the most racist places I've ever been, and that really took me by surprise. I knew it was a very white place. I just didn't realize it was going to be so racist because it has this reputation of being a very liberal city. But I've even had not the best encounters with liberal white people here as well, which doesn't surprise me, but it's just disappointing. It's just a disappointing aspect of living here. And so I'm not really very encouraged to stay here long or make friends because of the experiences I've had in the last 6 months. But again, aesthetically, I love this place. It's just I haven't been able to find my tribe here, and I don't know how I can comfortably. And so I had been considering leaving in March. But this weekend, being able to travel back home to LA, you know, for a few days and have a purpose while I'm there, the Free to Be Fest, was really great for me. And I will say, being part of the planning committee of the festival has had its challenges for me because I am the only one of the core group that was working on the festival that was working from a distance. There were a couple other people that were also working from a distance, but they weren't necessarily a part of every planning stage and stuff. And so I have been, there's been times when it didn't really feel real what I was working on until I finally got to LA and got to be a part of setting the space up, and then of course the festival. And given that things have been so challenging for me, to be around familiar faces and everything was really helpful and felt good. And then also having a purpose, something to work on, felt really good as well. And from the time that the planning committee reunited at the location on Friday to set up, it was like, okay, I'm home and I'm doing something. I have a purpose. And it was exhausting work. The whole weekend was really exhausting, but it was that kind of good exhausting where you're just proud of every element of things that you did. And I hadn't been with the team in person since the last year's Free to Be Fest, when I just went as an attendee. But everybody that was on the planning committee this time had been at the festival last year. So it was just, you know, it was good. It was familiar. And I don't really have a lot of good and familiar where I'm currently living. The festival itself, though, just went a whole lot better than I was anticipating. And that's mostly because I'm a very pessimistic person, like I was even before Tristan died. And so I'm always expecting the worst. And I was just waiting, like almost throughout the day. There were just times when I was just like waiting for tragedy to strike, and it just never came. And then eventually I was able to let go and just participate. And that's my own personal character flaw. It has nothing to do with the festival itself. But yeah, there was times when I was just like, this is gonna, you know, there was early steps where I was like, oh wait, this didn't fail. Oh wait, this didn't fail. The festival opened with my panel, Permission to be Mixed. Well, there was actually 4 panels going on at the same time, or 4 events going on at the same time, but the adult panel was mine. It was the Permission to be Mixed panel. There was something for kids, something for teens, and everything, and something for parents, I believe. But I didn't, because it was so early in the start of the day, I didn't really anticipate a full house, and yet it really did fill up while we were doing the panel. My guests on that panel were Alex Chester Iwata from Mixed Asian Media, Maris Litica, who you heard from last week on the show, from the Blended Future Project, a film producer, and he's just always been such a great and supportive member of this community. I've known him for about 5 years because we did a panel together in 2020, but we didn't actually meet until last year in person. But you can always count on Mars whenever you need a touchstone in the community or whatever. He's always there and supportive and gives great advice and stuff like that. And I was really appreciative of having him on the panel. And then the only person that was on the panel that I had met in advance was Manny Williams. He is a content creator, and he was connected to me through Dr. Jen. So we basically met like minutes before we jumped on the panel, and then we get on the panel and he fucking delivered. Because we hadn't had a chance to talk in advance, I was going to ask the questions and see where it was going to go. I didn't know him, but he fucking nailed it. And if you check the social media, either the Militantly Mixed page or Mixed Asian Media page or Dr. Jen's page, you're going to see clips from that panel and Manny speaking. There's 2, I think, that are up right now that Manny is the main speaker of those clips. And man, he fucking delivered. I immediately was like, okay, we're going to be best friends, and I'm going to definitely have to get him on the show soon if we can time it out before he travels, because it was really great. I feel that the questions that I asked were things that were kind of building up in me for a really long time, and so to have other people to bounce those off on was really great. And literally, Alex, Maris, Manny, all of them had such like good, encouraging, and empowering and thoughtful things to say. The audience actually, it took us a little minute before everybody got engaged in the Q&A part, but once they started asking questions, we started going well over time. And as a planner at 12, I had to jump off the panel so that I could go do my Free to Be Fest planner duties, not just Militantly Mixed duties. And so I had to leave the room with them still answering questions. And I think that is a sign of a really good panel, because it's one thing to go over time because everybody talks a lot. In this case, everything was very thoughtful. It wasn't just blathering on. It was literal, thoughtful, and empowering responses to people's questions. And I hated having to leave that room because it was going so well, and I was so proud of everything that was happening in there. But the panelists took it on, and they continued to answer questions until the next panel started, that they all some of them all jumped over to participate in, while I went on about my Free to Be Fest duties. And it was such a good start to the day. Like, it was one of those things where, because again, my pessimistic personality, I was going, how did this not go worse? But it went so well. And I'm trying to work on the pessimism, but it's my natural state. It was something that always frustrated Tristan too, because he was very optimistic. But we kind of balanced each other. Now I don't really have that balance, so I'm always kind of surprised when things go well. And yeah, that really did go well. I had a chance of meeting people that I've sort of been socially connected to through Militantly Mixed for many years. Meeting them in person for the first time, which was pretty cool. Getting to see some old faces as well. And then also, this was a surprise for me because I have been out of the game for, the last year and a half, only really checking in on the show and not really doing too many proper episodes over the last year and a half. I was surprised when people would be really excited to meet me or connect me as the voice that they hear on Militantly Mixed. There was a few people that, made an effort to pull me aside to tell me, like, hey, I'm a really fan of the show, and I, happy with this episode or that episode or whatever. And, that really surprised me because I haven't been consistent over the last year and a half. And to have people that are still that I hadn't interacted with before that are still connected to the show made me feel really good. And there was just a lot of times throughout the day that I would kind of say to myself, like, oh, this is why I do this work. I've had, besides the challenging year and a half since Tristan died, I've had some challenging times with Militantly Mixed because um, it used to be very interactive in the beginning, and then near the 4 and 5 year mark, it stopped being as interactive, and so I felt like I was speaking to the void a lot of times. And not to mention that, like, the show never sustained itself consistently. There was times when I could pay for everything having to do with keeping the show going, and then there was just times where I always had to come out of pocket for it. And you know it's times like that where you start thinking, like, oh, I guess this isn't actually working because it can't sustain itself. But with the way that people reacted to me and the things that people were saying to me throughout the festival, there's times when I, like, felt like hopefully this could sustain itself again. I don't know, but it felt really good throughout the whole day being in that space with so many mixed people. And one of my biggest emotional takeaways from the day, and this is just like on a personal note, this isn't Militantly Mixed main or anything like that. This isn't a Free to Be Fest co-planner main. This is just Charmaine, regular ass Charmaine. I have never been in a space with so many Blasians in my entire life. I want to say that it was probably about a third, if not slightly more, of the attendees for the whole day that were Blasian, with the majority being Black and South Asian. But there was a handful of us little Black and Japanese folks. There was a few Black and Chinese folks, Black and Filipino as well. When everybody was kind of standing huddled together, and one of the people there had asked, could we take a picture with all the mixed South Asians? And so all the mixed South Asians got up in front of the step and repeat, and almost all of them were Blasian. I could not believe it. And I actually got really choked up because the other Black Asians were around too. We just weren't in the Black South Asian picture. And it was one of 3 times that I cried throughout the day. I'm happy. I don't know if I'm happy to report. It sounds like a weird thing to say, but as a person who grieves, like, I do cry on and off throughout the day a lot. And in this case, I only cried 3 times that day. One was for grief reasons. It was also the day before the anniversary of a good friend of mine that had died last year as well. And I was with a friend that also was friends with that person. And so, we had our little moment about our friend. And then because Q died so close to Tristan 10 months later, I really do kind of connect their deaths for me as sort of like bookends of really intense grief period. And so that was a regular ass grief moment for me. The second time that I cried was when I saw all the Blasians together, because I just never had that kind of experience before. And for us, for mixed folks that don't really get to sit in community with people that are exactly like us, I mean, monoracial white people, monoracial Black people, monoracial Japanese, whatever people are, they get to be around people that look like them a lot and come from very similar cultural background and, maybe similar upbringing as well. But mixed folks, even if we are around other mixed folks, we're not mixed the same. We have different cultural connections and stuff like that. And so we're really vibing and connecting on the shared experience of being a mixed person, not what we are mixed with necessarily. And this was a rare moment where I got to be around quite a few people who have a very similar identity to me. And yeah, I mean, that was, I can't really describe what that feeling was, but it was emotional for me. It still is, even just thinking about it. But yeah, I did not anticipate that many Blasian people being in one space, but it was at least a third, if not slightly more, of the population for that day, and I just can't believe that was the case. And then the third time that I cried was during the film festival, and it was just like a little couple of tears, but it was because I had looked into I was emceeing the film festival portion, and all 4 films that we showed were about mixed people in some way, shape, or form, or by mixed people, with the exception kind of of the Loving Day film, which, while it did have a mixed child in the film, the story was about an interracial couple that was about to get married in the period of current America, being what it is, where the premise was that Loving versus Virginia was being repealed. It was an important film to show at the festival because, we are all, as mixed people, products of interracial relationships, if not directly, first generation, or like me, multi generational, with two biracial parents. There's huge implications of what could happen to our families if Loving versus Virginia gets repealed in the same way that Roe v. Wade did, or as it seems they're going to be putting up on the chopping block same sex marriage soon with the Supreme Court as well. So, as all of these protections are being rolled back, we have real fears and real concerns to be thinking about. And so, showing that film, because it does impact mixed people, was very important. But that wasn't necessarily the emotional moment of the entire thing. It was really me looking at the audience, watching the films, and seeing their mixed faces, looking up at the screen at those mixed faces, watching stories that, again, for us, by us, about us. And, even though I got to sit in the audience last year at the film festival, it's still, again, a very rare experience to be able to be in such a focused area of identity. And it just really felt good. We had a comedy showcase with 3 mixed comedians whose sets did involve like things about their mixed identity that a lot of us could all relate to in different pockets. Yeah, I'm going to do my best to try to get as many of the people that were at the festival, either on the stage or some of the folks that I interacted with, on the show in the future too, just because, those are fresh connections. And it would be, I had some really dynamic experiences that I would love for y'all to be able to share with those people. But it really was such a good day. And it was a really long day too. We got there in the morning. The festival was from kind of 11 to 11. We kind of got out of there. I think I got out of there around like 12:30, 1 o'clock and in the morning. And not real. I really only sat down to rest like one time, and for about a half an hour, I really couldn't get up. My body was really taxed. But to be able to get through such a long day, when I have been walking on a cane for since September, on and off. I have existing knee issues, like 20-year-old injury and stuff like that, and it's just never really got better. And I've also put on about 70 pounds of weight since my husband died, like my grief weight, and my body is just not responding well to that. Like, it's really been taxing on my knee problems and my ankle problems and my feet problems and stuff like that. And so I have had to be on a cane on and off for the last, I guess, I don't know how long that is, since September. But I actually managed to get through most of the day without my cane, and it wasn't even conscious. I accidentally just left it in the room that I did the panel in, and it was like hours later that I remembered it was there and had to go up and get it. And so really, I spent most of the day on and off without it, and I really don't know how that's possible, because I really haven't spent a whole day without it. I can walk without it for periods of time, but then I get pretty exhausted, and then I got to start using it again. So the fact that I got through most of the day, I feel like must have been just adrenaline or something, because I did end up needing it the next day. But I was really, I don't know, proud of that, I guess. I've also been doing stem cell treatments on my knees, and they have been getting a little bit better too. But the combination, I think, of the treatments and the adrenaline of the day kept me off the cane, and I was glad that I could feel kind of like a normal person that day. So I'll leave it kind of there. There's so much more to talk about, but I want to do that with the rest of the team, and hopefully we can get that done in the next couple weeks for you. But before I get out of here, I do actually have a really big life announcement that will have an impact on the show. I just don't know what that impact is. When I decided that I was going to relaunch the show in July, I had been working with those of you might know her as Asian Soph for a few months, because she has a marketing company, and she was kind of helping guide me for my relaunch. And in the process, I had a new plan of how I was going to approach the show that was still going to focus on mixed stuff, but was also going to incorporate all this other stuff that I have going on, because I can't really separate from that anymore. You know, obviously my grief comes up quite a bit because, I mean, that's not going anywhere. I lost my partner of, you know, in a relationship of 24 years, but in life and knowing each other in friendship, 31 years of my life has been spent with this person. And so, you know, I'm not just going to be okay anytime soon. Um and just like I needed community where mixedness was concerned when I started the show, I kind of need community where people understand grief like I experienced too. And so incorporating that, as well as all the other stuff that makes me me, the comic book stuff, the pop culture stuff, the queer stuff, you know, the political activism, you know, it all kind of needed one place to be, because I could really only handle doing this much labor on the show, on one show. Militantly Mixed is a very heavy labor intensive project, both emotionally and just like in productivity and work and stuff like that. And it was impossible to do in normal scale in that last year and a half since I lost Tristan, but I was doing my best to try to figure out how I was going to do it going forward. And as I started to get back into it, started to record with folks, and I have recorded with some folks that it's not been shared yet, and doing the editing, I was not feeling good about it. I'll be honest. I was thinking I don't think I have it in me anymore. And but I didn't want to lose it. I just couldn't figure out a way to approach it that was sustainable for me and what I would assume would be appealing to the audience. And then I just kind of repositioned my focus on the Free to Be Fest because it was coming up, and I was like, I will deal with the Militantly Mixed thing after, but for now it's all about Free to Be Fest. And thankfully, the Free to Be Fest, the physical part of being at the Free to Be Fest, reminded me why I do the show. That being said, I still don't really know how to approach it in a way that is sustainable for me. So I don't believe I'm going to be as consistent as I would have liked to be when I decided to relaunch. But I still feel passionate about making the effort to try to figure out how to do this show. And that might mean people helping me now. In the past, I've never really let people help me because I couldn't pay them, and I still can't pay them. But you know, maybe it isn't just a Charmaine project. Maybe it's a more public project or something like that. I don't know. But I have turned down support in the past, like labor support in the past, because I couldn't pay people. I don't like to feel like I'm exploiting anybody in any way, shape, or form. But this is a very expensive project, and it's a very labor intensive project. And so I will have to find a solution to make this sustainable going forward. But in the meantime, I'm only going to promise that I'll do my best, and I'll release episodes when I have that ability to do it, because I can't account for when grief is going to make it impossible for me to work. That being said, my big announcement. I've always wanted to go to law school ever since high school, but I didn't go right after high school because my family discouraged it because we were poor and they didn't think it was a very financially possible thing to do. And so I worked full time throughout my entire undergrad. It took me 7 years to finally get my degree. And in the end, I ended up, in the last year and a half, I ended up doing a film degree, which is like one of the most impractical degrees to ever get. But, you know, I still got it. I still graduated. I'm the first person in my family on both sides to go to college. So, you know, even though it took me a long time, I still felt good about it. And then 10 years later, when I was, you know, a real adult and my husband was finally kind of stable in a job for a period of time, teaching at Bridgewater State University, I decided to go back and get my master's. And I considered going to law school at the time, but I was nervous about like the sunken cost into the film industry that I had done by that point, and my education and stuff like that. So I ended up getting an entertainment business master's, which really hasn't served its purpose the entire time I got it. It's just that I have a master's now, basically. It's never helped me in a job, and And well, I learned a lot and everything like that. It was mostly a networking thing. The connections I created from that program led me to my comic book shop in Texas, and some. I had a friend for a period of time that was like an editor on some of my projects. So essentially, that's what that master's did. And then I kind of thought I was done, although I did make jokes that, in another 10 years, I should try to get my PhD because I was getting a degree 10 years apart. But that also wasn't very feasible either. And after Tristan died and me trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, the thought about law school came back up. And I did look into a PhD program, honestly, but to go into law school, you can't just go straight into a PhD. You have to have a law degree of some sort. And so I started looking at various law schools to maybe consider applying to next year, maybe. But if anything, I'm as thorough as I can be. So I decided to take meetings with, like, information session meetings with various law schools. And of the meetings I had, there was one in particular that was really great. And it just so happened to be here in Seattle. The assistant dean of the School of Law sat with me for a while to talk about the various law programs that they had at Seattle University. And in the process of that conversation, I zeroed in on what I was going to do. And she had said, there are still a couple of slots left over in the fall 2025 cohort. So if you are feeling, like you definitely want to go down this path, I would encourage you to apply now. And she said, if you apply now and don't get accepted, worse off than you are now, and you can still apply next year. But if you do get accepted, then your path can start now. And because I did share that I was, a recent widow and living here and not really feeling grounded here or anything like that, she's like, you might end up finding that community you're looking for if you get accepted this year. I didn't think I was going to be successful in gathering the materials I needed in time for the application because I really only had a couple weeks to get that in. But I did manage it. Even my person that I reached out to for my letter of rec managed to get it done too, even though they had a lot going on. And I, sent it all over, submitted it, and just said, that was a fun activity that's not going to pay off this year, but at least I, have everything I need for next year, and I could just start working on making myself a more appealing candidate for next year. So I only applied to the one law school for this year with the intention that next year I was going to apply to this school again and others. But I got in. I did not expect it, but I got in. So I'm not actually going through a JD program. I'm not going to be an attorney, but what I am getting is a master's of legal studies with a focus on sort of human rights and social justice. One of the things that I'm really passionate about, or that I try to get involved in on occasion, is the Innocence Project. And wrongful convictions is, for whatever reason, a very important. I don't know why. I don't have anybody in my life that was wrongfully convicted, but I tend to gravitate towards those stories a lot because they just feel like such a fucking injustice. And so I'm going to be gearing my learning towards that so that maybe in the future I can work in something like the Innocence Project, or to help people with wrongful convictions, and or continue to support my social activism through what I'm going to learn, like understanding policy better and understanding the legal system better. So I actually start school in 14 days from the day I'm recording this. And that also is a surprise because the rest of the school, Seattle University, starts about a month later, but the law school starts technically September 2nd, but I have a class I'm taking that for whatever reason starts a week early. So August 28th, I will officially begin law school as a Master's of Legal Studies candidate. And I'm really proud of that, like that I actually was able to get my shit together enough to apply, let alone get in. It's a path that I wanted to take a long time ago. And, I'm not sure if Tristan had lived. I'm not sure if I would have ever been able to have the opportunity to do it, because I was always the primary breadwinner in our family. And the last 2 years of his life, he wanted me to try my best to pursue my dreams. And so he changed careers so that he could take over support. But then he died 2 years later. So I just didn't know what I was going to do. And it started to pop up again in my head, like maybe consider law school. I'm not really ready to return to the workforce right now anyway. So, maybe prolonging that time through school is a good thing, but also I'll finally get to learn the system that I've been interested in learning for so long, and finding a way to support my social activism through that knowledge. Or perhaps maybe I can end up supporting people who have been wrongfully convicted, which is important to me too. So I'm very proud of this. I do not know what this means in terms of my schedule for Militantly Mixed now, because at the time I decided to relaunch, law school this year was not on the horizon. I did apply only in late June, early July. That's how soon all this happened. There was only a couple spots left over. So, yeah, that's going to be my big life change. It is not my intention to stop doing the show full stop, but it is because I am going to be only going kind of 3/4 time. So I will still have time to do Militantly Mixed shows. I just don't know if it's going to be weekly. I think I might go back to the every other week schedule that I was doing kind of before I went on my long hiatus. I really honestly, at the time I'm recording this, I do not have the answer. I just know that I have a few things that are kind of loosely on the schedule for recording. So I know that there will be episodes. I also have some things that were recorded back in June that I haven't gotten together to release because I ended up focusing on Free to Be Fest. So there is more episodes coming. It's just that in the midst of all of this, I am chaotically preparing my life for law school in 2 weeks. When I left for LA on Friday, I thought I still had about a month. It wasn't until yesterday that I found out that month shortened to 2 weeks. So yeah, I'm recording this on Thursday, August 14th, and I start on August 28th. And I only found out yesterday that I start on August 28th. So I have to get my shit together, and get myself prepared to go back to school as a 47-year-old widow who is still heavily steeped in grief and suffers productivity issues because of that grief. But if the Free to Be Fest this weekend taught me anything, it's just that when I have a project, I seem to be able to get it together. And not without a little bit of failing, but I was able to get it together enough to participate in this Free to Be Fest. So I'm hoping that this will be my project that helps me manage my grief. Not remove it. It's never going away, but I need to find a better way to live with it, because it's been a year and a half of mostly being on the couch with small bursts of productivity. So I really need a purpose, and I feel like this is finally my purpose for Seattle. It will mean that I am going to stay here longer than I was considering, since I was considering leaving next March. I will be able to stay here throughout my program, and then who knows, by that point maybe I will have found my community and I stay. Maybe I go back to LA. Maybe I leave the country again. Everything is up for grabs, but I can say, at least for the first time in a long time, I'm feeling really positive. And I'm looking forward to something. And I haven't been able to feel like that in a long time. I mean, even kind of looking forward to moving to Seattle didn't feel anything like I'm feeling today. So it's hard to take steps that feel like moving forward. Every time I do, I feel kind of like I'm
betraying Tristan a little bit because he can't move forward, but I know he wouldn't want me to shrivel up and not live. And I will say that I've really only been existing since he died. And this is the first time that I feel like there's a possibility I can start living again. So, on that note, I'm going to end this episode. I did just want to share that big news with the audience, and I did just want to share that big news with the audience, and I hope that you will continue to support the sort of dodgy schedule that I have had over the last few months and the last year and a half, and potentially for the next year and a half to 2 years that it'll take me to get through this program. But good work is still on the horizon, I think. And for those of you who were not at the Free to Be Fest this weekend, we did announce our date for next year so that you can kind of put it on your calendar. And, you know, maybe if you don't live in the LA area, you can start planning a vacation or a holiday to LA. Next September, our date is going to be Saturday, September 19th. And we will begin planning very soon for the festival next year. So it is another thing to look forward to and be excited about. And honestly, I'm really hoping that I will be able to get more people who participated in Free to Be Fest on the show so that you can hear what the experience is like and encourage you to come, because it really, really was so amazing. One thing that I do want to do is, if you went to the festival and you're listening to this show, this episode, I have a SpeakPipe page, and SpeakPipe is a website that allows you to record a voice memo for your favorite podcasts, and it would give me an opportunity to potentially play those voice notes on the show. And I would like to encourage those of you who attended the Free to Be Fest this year, if you wouldn't mind heading on over to speakpipe.com/militantly mixed. And I'm going to put a link for fucking everything in the show notes that I've talked about today, or all the people that were on the panel. I'll put those links in the show notes as well. But SpeakPipe, speak as in talk, pipe as in, you know, the big circular thing that you can push liquids and shit through. speakpipe.com/militantly mixed. There is also a widget for that on the Militantly Mixed website on the homepage. You just got to scroll down a little bit to find it. And I really do want to redo this website. It's a couple years old at this point, and it's not very well laid out. But for now, you got to just scroll on the homepage until you find the widget that would allow you to record a voice note. And please share your thoughts and experiences from the Free to Be Fest so that I can possibly play that on a future episode of the show. Or if there's other things that you want to make a voice note for Militantly Mixed on, feel free to do so. I won't guarantee that every recording will end up on the show, but it has always been a dream of mine to have a more interactive show. And I listen to a lot of podcasts that have like voice notes from audience members played in a segment of the show, and I would love that to be something that happens on Militantly Mixed as well. So if you have thoughts, opinions, you have a happy mix moment, you want to answer the question that I ask everybody, what do you love most about being mixed? You want to share your experience about the Free to Be Fest, anything like that. If it's related to mixedness or Militantly Mixed, please feel free to record a voice note on the SpeakPipe page. I am not paying for the professional version of it yet, so it will time out at some point when I hit capacity. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't give it a try. And maybe once the show becomes a little bit more financially sustainable, I will pay for the professional account. How about that? Okay. That's all I got for y'all today. I really thought this was going to be like a 20-minute episode, but of course I talked too much, so it's longer than that. I will try to be back in the next week or two with discussion from the Free to Be Fest planning committee, depending on how law school goes. All right, y'all. As always, don't forget to be your mixed ass selves, and I'll be back as soon as I can. Peace. Militantly Mixed is a Main Hustle Media podcast, produced and hosted by me, Charmaine Fury. Music is by David Bogan, The One. You can follow us on social media on Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube at Militantly Mixed. If you'd like to become a sponsor of Militantly Mixed or any Main Hustle Media shows, please go to patreon.com/Charmaine Fury for a monthly sponsorship or to paypal.me/Militantly Mixed for a one-time only donation. And if you like what you hear on Militantly Mixed, please subscribe, rate, and review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to be your mixed ass selves. Peace, y'all.
Main Hustle Media. Turn your side hustle into your main hustle.